Okay, all right, here we're all here now. So this is welcome to the City of Durango City Council regular meeting of January 4th, 2022. Happy New Year, everyone. We're off to a rip-roaring start today. May we have a call to order, please? Or may we have a roll call, actually? See, long vacation.
Certainly. Councilor Bosmans?
Present.
Here.
Here. Present.
Present. May we have the introduction of the translators, please?
Okay, I'll get started. So good evening, everyone. My name is Diego Juan.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can people hear me?
Yeah, you're going in and out.
Oh.
Sorry.
Wonder. Let me know, can you hear me without breaking up right now?
No, you seem to be fine right now.
Okay. So I'm here today with my colleague Priscilla Rice on behalf of the Community Language Cooperative. So the organizers of this meeting have made a commitment towards language justice. So this just means that we're here to help create a space so people can participate in English and in Spanish for today's meeting. So that means we'll use simultaneous interpretation to help create this space here on Zoom. And when I finish saying this in English, I'll repeat the instructions in Spanish. At that moment, the interpretation will be turned on. So if you're on Zoom, you'll look at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen and look for that globe option that says interpretation. It should be right there next to your reactions button. Once you see that globe icon pop up, select it and please select your preferred language. If you happen to be joining today's meeting on your cell phone or your tablet, I'm going to ask you to please look for the 3 dots button or the more option in order to select your preferred language that way. And if you're not fully bilingual, we ask that you please do select your preferred language so that you can utilize the interpretation in case you need it. But if you are bilingual, feel free to listen to everyone in their original language. And when you select your language, you can check your original audio so that you don't have to hear both languages at the same time. Thank you. Buenas tardes a todos y a todas. Mi nombre es Diego Pons y estoy aquí hoy de parte de la Cooperativa de Justicia del Lenguaje. Así que gracias por invitarnos hoy a esta reunión. Estoy aquí hoy con mi colega Priscilla Rice y los organizadores de esta reunión se han comprometido hoy a servir la justicia del lenguaje. Y eso significa que queremos crear un espacio para que todos puedan participar e involucrarse en el idioma de su corazón, que hoy será inglés o español, para que todos se sientan más cómodos. Vamos a utilizar la interpretación simultánea hoy en Zoom para poder crear ese espacio. Cuando yo termine de decir esto, se va a activar la interpretación. En ese momento, cuando esté activada la interpretación, usted va a poder observar un icono de un globo terráqueo que dirá interpretación ahí abajo en la derecha de su pantalla, al lado del botón de las reacciones. Seleccionen ese icono del globo terráqueo cuando lo vean y por favor seleccionen su idioma preferido. Si usted está asistiendo hoy a esta reunión en su celular o en su tableta, le voy a pedir que por favor busque la opción que dice More, que quiere decir más, o el botón de 3 puntos para que pueda seleccionar su idioma preferido de esa manera. Y yo le pido que si usted no es completamente bilingüe, seleccione su idioma preferido para que pueda utilizar interpretación en caso de que sea necesario. Pero si usted sí es bilingüe, siéntase libre de escuchar a todos hoy en su idioma original y no tendrán que escucharnos a nosotros, los intérpretes. Y cuando usted seleccione su idioma, puede hacer clic en silenciar el audio original para no escuchar ambos idiomas al mismo tiempo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much and for being here, for supporting our efforts. Now I will ask if there are any identifications of actual or perceived conflicts of interest by councilors for this evening's agenda. Wonderful. Seeing none, we'll move on to public participation. So we'll do both in person and Zoom.
We didn't have anyone signed up.
No one signed up. Are there any Zoom candidates for public participation?
I don't see anybody, Mayor. Please raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Give them a couple minutes, a couple seconds. Nope, nobody.
Wonderful, okay. So now we're on to proclamations and presentations. 6.1, Chief Bob Bramer, presentation of officer recognition related to Fort Lewis College partnership response.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'd like to take this opportunity real quickly to bring out several officers and the Deputy Chief, as they will be not only helping me present this evening, they will also be receiving the recognition from Council. So come on up, gentlemen. Just stand over here. We really trained for this stuff.
Yeah, I can tell.
Again, my name is Bob Rammer. I'm the Chief of Police for the City of Durango. Thank you for this opportunity for allowing us to present some of the special recognition for some of the members and their efforts that they contributed on December 15th of 2021. If I may refresh council's memory, on December 15th, we started receiving information from some threats that occurred up at Fort Lewis College. That morning, I was traveling to Washington, D.C. for a meeting, and I started receiving some text messages from some concerned citizens that there was a notification that went out through the Fort Lewis Skyhawk network saying that classes were canceled due to some threats that they had. At that time, Sergeant Bruce Hamer, who's no longer here, was in communication with the Fort Lewis PD officer up at the campus, and they were trying to ascertain if this threat was legitimate or not. At that point, I spoke to the deputy chief and advised him of what my intent was, because I was not going to be able to help out because I was traveling at that time, and gave him my intent of what was going to go on. And so at that point, we always try to provide as many resources as we possibly can to Fort Lewis College. They are part of our community. We partner very well with them, and they are a significant aspect of what our community is and who we represent. So it was real important for us to lend them the resources that they needed in order to ascertain if this threat was real. And unfortunately, as we continue to see across this country and across the world as a whole, is mass acts of violence are almost a daily occurrence in many aspects. And we want to make sure that that did not happen here. And we had some very proactive measures that came in from our community to ensure that we were partnering correctly, we had the information we needed, and we reacted very quickly to that, which allowed us to not work in a reactive mode and deal with the situation after it occurred. So at this point, I'd like to turn this over to Deputy Chief Current to kind of list the events that transpired that day and the specific recognitions to the individual officers that are present here this evening that ensured success along with some of our regional partners.
Thank you, Chief, Mayor, Council. On December 15th, Chief Bramer did notify me about the threat at the college, and the college police department did ask for our assistance. And we partnered with them and the FBI to locate the suspects. And after the arrest, Chief Deming wrote the following message that I'm going to read. Bob and Bryce, I wanted to reach out to you and say thank you to your staff for the incredible assistance they provided our agency yesterday. With the threat of a campus shooting, Detective Newman responded quickly to our department when we believed we were in need of an expert in social media, as that is what the threat originated. He was an incredible help with the incident and remained at our office, working with us to resolve the issue. Your patrol staff also did an incredible job and were on top of it locating the suspect at the Everyday store. The assistance provided by your agency helped get our campus back open safely and as soon as possible. You have a great staff who were incredibly professional throughout the incident, and I hope they get recognized for their efforts. Thank you again, and I look forward to future collaboration with your agency. So after reading the chief's message, the city manager requested that we recognize these officers before council and the city of Durango. We would like to recognize Sergeant Bruce Hamer, who's not here with us today, but he's with our department, and Sergeant Devin Conroy, who's here today, for their leadership in organizing the investigation. They were on it first thing in the morning. We'd like to identify Detective Josh Newman for his continued expertise in computer forensics and his efforts to see cases through to completion. We want to thank Officer Colin Harvey for locating the suspect based on limited information, and he's also the same officer that located the 8th Ave Tav shooter earlier this year. We want to recognize Detective Tony Mraz and Officer Jim Martindale, who's not here today. There's Officer Mraz, for their assistance and continued work ethic and dependability. These officers exemplify the city's core values: teamwork, innovation, dependability, professionalism, and service. I would like to thank Chief Deming, the FBI, college faculty, the Durango Herald, the District Attorney's Office, and other key partners for their assistance. We believe in these partnerships. The Durango Police Department believes in the historic tradition that the police are the public and the public are the police. We are nothing without these partnerships. We would like to further thank the City Council, the Durango citizens, and the federal partners for providing a training budget to assist these investigators and these officers in their expertise and the professionalism needed, not only to be effective, but to be effective when it counts. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate
Gosh.
it. On to item 6.2, third quarter strategic plan update. Ms. Schmidt.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Devin Schmidt. I am the Budget and Strategic Plan Officer for the City of Durango. I'll be taking you all through the quarter 3 strategic plan update. I also did want to note that the quarter 4 strategic plan update will be presented to Council on January 18th, so a bit more timely than this presentation. We were a little busy with budget, so apologies for this third quarter update being a little bit behind here. So to start off, I'll present each area of the strategic plan, highlighting the objectives that are complete or cautionary or needs focus. And I'm happy to report that there's only one item on the plan for quarter 3 that needs focus. So as a reminder, the purpose of the strategic plan is to outline short and midterm objectives, influence the city budget process, guide city services, and set priorities that align with organizational strategies, motivate our resources, strengthen operations, and ensure the team is working towards a common goal. So to start off, I'm going to scroll down to financial excellence and transparency. And again, the items that I will highlight this evening will be the ones that are complete, in a cautionary status, or needs focus. And if council has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
That was my question, actually, because this is under presentation, so I wanted to make sure it's okay to ask questions. And if so, do you want us to ask questions at the end, or?
I would say as we're going through it, I'll pause on each strategic plan objective, and then I can answer questions or defer to the staff that has the objective if I can.
Great.
Okay?
So as we're going through.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so starting off financial excellence and transparency, you will see here that we do have one item complete, which is the develop a fund balance reserve policy. We do have an item here that is listed, renew and diversify investment strategies to mitigate on investments by developing a policy that follows best practices. And so this item is listed as caution, as this project is actually going out for our RFP process in January. It's listed as cautionary because the target was to complete that item by the end of 2021. However, that will not be the case for that particular item. So then moving on.
Before you move on
Sure.
to the next.
Yeah.
Staff for the financial transparency and public trust area. I just think we've made such great strides with OpenGov and the monthly financial reporting on our website, and I just felt that that really deserves recognition. And then one question, when do you anticipate that we will be reviewing the 10-year financial forecast for all funds? I didn't see it in the study session calendar, Jose, and so I wasn't sure. I'm hoping we're going to be doing that in 2022 relatively soon.
Definitely. As we look at our budget process, we do have some budget updates that goes through with that. So that document really is planned to kind of use a one thing and we're done. So we'll really definitely start to begin to see it as we get into the budget process for the next year. So we can look at, here's what we're projecting we're going to be, here's what our 10-year outlook looks like, and then also just kind of consistently use that as a tool. So it's not a one presentation, and we want to make sure we don't do one presentation and kind of hang it on the shelf, but it's something that's...
Got it. That makes total sense. And so that, I'm sure that's probably the same then with the 10-year capital improvement financial plan. That's all part of budget processing that we'll be reviewing annually, but we'll see it this first.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before? Okay, no problem. Thank you. Okay, so moving on, one of the other items that we have listed as complete in Q3 of 2021 was provide training and communicate governance plan on Microsoft 365, including Teams, file sharing, with 30% of staff attending one or more trainings in a 12-month period. So that one is complete with Q3 at 64% of city staff have taken at least one Microsoft training class. So that's a good accomplishment there. Scrolling down a little bit to right here, where we have a completion under increased CIRSA training programs, completion participation rate by 95%. So this goal was met with departments at 100%. Launch a property safety awareness campaign, and that was complete as well. So citywide for the month of August to all staff. And before I move on, any questions under set standards for sound, effective, and trained governance? Okay. Moving on to affordability and economic opportunity. Under the item of create housing to enhance multi-generational community workforce, as well as attainable and affordable housing. We have one item that's listed as cautionary, which is revise and adopt a new fair share ordinance. So the city did receive 2 requests for proposals. No proposals, the city did put out a request for proposals, excuse me. No proposals were received. Staff will work with Homes Fund and stakeholders on proposed changes. And I believe there was an update to council in December. So again, this is a little bit backwards, but did want to provide the update. And then additionally, under establish policies to allow use of housing funds to facilitate unit construction. Currently, staff is developing policies for consideration by council to enable the allocation of some funds during the 2022 budget process. Staff will continue to work with council to develop additional clarity around the specific goals and policy for the remaining funds through the coming year. So again, this is a Q3 update, so we've obviously discussed that somewhat in the budget process. Any questions on this objective before I move on?
I do have a couple. I'm sorry. No but I, when you were talking about this, working with staff to talk about funding solutions, will that include your discussion around transfer fees? I saw it on here, and I wasn't sure when we would be talking about that. The reason why I'm asking is CML is looking at the same. CML will be having those same discussions, looking at trying to find sustainable funding solutions for housing. And one of the discussions is around transfer fees. And I saw it on our list, but I wasn't sure when we were going to have that discussion.
Not a problem. I would probably defer to Kevin. We've got a thumbs up for Kevin. So yes. Yep.
Okay. And also the same as with reviewing the land use and development code. That I'm sure will be part of the process as well. Yeah, okay.
Yes. Yep.
And then one more question for you, I'm sorry. Is the community engagement project regarding the downtown visioning project the same as the long-term vision for Durango that we're looking at on June 20th?
Which one?
So on our strategic plan, I'm sorry, we have the long-term vision for Durango. And I wanted to know if that's the same as the our downtown visioning project that we're looking at with bid and the sidewalks. I just wanted to make sure it's in our purview, and I wasn't sure if it was under economic diversity, if I was just thinking maybe it would be there. And so my question is, long-term vision for Durango on June 20th, what is that discussion
On the study session
Yes,
calendar.
correct.
Not on the strategic.
Correct.
Gotcha, okay.
Yes, sorry. Yeah.
Gotcha, okay, that helps, thank you.
I'm sorry, is that long-term vision for Durango on June 20th on the study session calendar the same as the downtown visioning project?
My sense is that the downtown visioning is only a sub of that larger conversation, but
Okay.
forgive me, I'm not familiar with what we put on the 20th for study session of June the 20th. I think we just need to have that conversation, but it strikes me as it's a subset. The downtown is just a small.
Okay, because where my head is going with this, I'm sorry, but I'm looking at our strategic plan, and as I look through our strategic plan, and I'm thinking follow-up, I want to make sure I'm seeing it, you know, as that we get to have these discussions. So I look at these, and I see something that I know we'll have to continue discussions around. And so in general, I have a lot of questions, and I don't need to, around when will we be following up on these items, you know, and as a council, how will I know when we get to follow up on those items? I guess it's, in general, is kind of my question. It's what I was talking to during our study session, how all of these are linked. Our study session is linked to our strategic plan is linked to our study session calendar, and I just want to see that. That's what I was playing with, that cross-examination of where we're having those discussions.
Okay.
And when we're bringing those to council, so we have those discussions. Do you understand?
Kind of, and I think there's a lot of different ways in which it goes. I mean, so one of the first parts of having this discussion is right now, as we talk about it and bringing it back and showing you here's the progress that we've made. I think the hard part is the third quarter is coming a little later just because of the budget process, but
right.
We recall that come June, this strategic plan will be updated again by the current council. So sometimes that linkage is going to have a little bit of a gap. Specifically what this item is that was placed on here for June 20th, I don't have I don't know exactly which staff member placed it on. We can follow back up and figure out what was the intent of that item. This was really just kind of for a look forward, but when it comes to our strategic plan, a lot of the things that we go through, we're working through consistently throughout the year. And then during these parts are where we're providing our quarterly updates of saying, here's the progress we've made, whether we're on track or not. So those are kind of the linkage points that there. I'm not sure I've answered your question, but trying to give a background to it.
That's helpful. And I guess what I'm hoping, and I'm certain that this is the case, is a lot of these projects are still outstanding, and so they will continue into 2022. Correct. And so I was wanting to make sure that was the case.
They should continue unless there's a change in the strategy or a change in the goal by the council that decides that this may not be something that you would like staff to focus on in 2022.
Okay.
And if I may add just a little clarity around that study session agenda item around the long-term vision of that was one of the items that council had requested be placed on the study session agenda. So I don't know that we've worked with staff yet to determine exactly what that is. I think there's obviously a lot of facets that could fall into that. It could be the same discussion we just had related to the marketing RFP, or it could be the area where Kevin was just describing there. Obviously it's a very broad topic, but it does tie back obviously to the strategic plan, as that's our marching orders and what we try to align all of our objectives to, if that helps.
That does help. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down here a little bit to expand economic development opportunities with regional stakeholders. So we have 3 items listed as complete in this area. We have assist urban renewal authority to implement URA projects, adopt the Midtown plan, and execute tax incremental finance agreement. Those are all listed as complete as of quarter 3 for the 2021. And then moving on to provide job opportunities for the community. The one item that we do have as complete or somewhat of a not applicable is the analyze homeless strategy as part of any proposed regional housing authority. And the latest update on that is not a regional housing authority focus. So any questions on AEO before I move on? Okay, hearing none, we're moving on to enhance livability and sense of place. The first item that we have listed here is under police. So we have implement reimagine policing concepts in cooperation with Access Mental Health. Have one co-response team fielded by first quarter of 2021 and second team by second quarter of 2022. Also part of this item is collaboration with MANA's Navigation Center through the Durango Police Department's Homeless Outreach Coordinator, diverting 500 to 1,000 non-police service calls annually. And so we have that listed as complete. The latest update is that the second core team was activated in the second quarter of 2021. Overall for the year, the core team has diverted 294 calls for service from patrol. In addition, they have conducted 270 follow-up calls. An additional item that we have here is that the Durango PD leadership has collaborated with MANA and the Homeless Coordinating Council to develop SMART goals, seeking to create resources for homeless while working with code enforcement to educate and enforcing RV and camping ordinances. So then moving on down here, we do have an item listed as caution. This is related to the number of community-oriented policing activities held annually, and so that is recreate community engagement team in 2022 and host and participate in a minimum monthly engagement events. And what we have listed here is that PD memberships are attending a variety of community meetings each week. However, with staffing issues, there has been prevented in advancing this objective. Any questions on before I move on?
I just want to suggest again that I think it's worthy of acknowledgement of the DPD, of the reduced crime rates and violent crime and motor vehicle theft. Just outstanding to see that reduction, and thank you again for your efforts.
Okay. So under improve financial viability of amenities, including the Durango Public Library, Parks and Recreation, and work of the creative economy. So we do have the first item there is listed as caution. So we have complete an economic impact study of Parks and Rec Department. So that item is listed as caution because the economic study is still in progress with the transition and staffing. The project has been slightly delayed. However, the anticipation completion is January or February of 2022. Next, the other item that we have listed as caution is under redevelopment of the Animas River Trail from Rank Park and Demon Bridge. So the note that we have there is that the contract is in place and construction is delayed to early spring of 2022 due to the process with environmental clearances. And then finally, the final one that we have listed as caution is to complete park improvements on neighborhood and community parks. So the Mason Center, Hillcrest View, Pioneer Parks, community park improvements at Santa Rita. So the Mason Center is complete. However, staff is looking into alternative uses for the gymnasium location. Santa Rita will be 95% complete by the end of the year. Some landscaping to be completed in 2022. Hillcrest View and Pioneer Parks have been rescheduled for 2022, and the funds were reappropriated in the budget process, and that's due to the staffing impacts with those two projects. Any questions on that area of the plan before I move on? Okay. So under that same section, we have several items that are listed as complete. So under create enhanced art and culture participation opportunities for all residents and visitors by utilizing the install frolic and common thread art pieces. So that item is actually listed as complete and caution because the city went out to bid for the common threads and received no bids. The city will try again in 2022. However, the frolic has been installed.
Where is the frolic?
It's outside the wastewater treatment plant that we had. It's like
Gotcha, it's the one that, yep. Okay, great, thank you.
Excellent. So the other items that we have listed as complete is the efforts to help with economic recovery. And so that is the Art Brigade program is complete in 2021 and will continue to support the Durango Creative District. The other item is distribute Durango Creative grants to quality projects that meet program goals. And the Durango Creates grant funding has been given out for 2021. So those are listed as complete. Any questions before moving on? Okay. So under Ensure Effective Infrastructure Network, we have several items listed under complete or needs focus. The first item that we have listed under complete is the Renew Gold Level Bike Friendly Community designation by the League of American Bicyclists. For the items that are listed as under caution, the Design Midtown Safety and Accessibility Project. Design is underway and will be completed May 2022. Design was delayed due to budget negotiations with a consultant that resulted in a special appropriation that was approved by council in May. And negotiations with CDOT to fund the traffic study of the project. The second item that's under caution is Design 32nd Street Traffic Calming Project. Again, design is underway to be completed in February of 2022. For the Design Camino Crossing Project, design is underway and anticipated to be completed August of 2022. And design for US 550 Transit ADA improvements, Phase 1, to proceed as pending CDOT's IGA process.
I have a question on that, Devin.
Okay.
On the Design Midtown Safety and Accessibility Project, and I don't see Sarah here or Devin, but I was just curious if you can get an answer for me. Will they be having any meetings with the fire chief, given their recent purchase, and how that design may look?
I believe Sarah is out today, but I can certainly get that question answered for you and follow up. Not a problem. Okay.
I'm not instructing, I'm just asking if there's any intent.
And I just have a question, comment, I guess. I just see multiple design projects under mobility, accessibility, transit, and transportation, which is great for 2022. But I'm hoping that we set aside enough time to review those, the studies at the end of the conclusion of those, because I think that as a council, it's a lot of them coming all at once, it appears. So I'll look forward to reviewing those upon completion.
Okay, so then moving on to, mobility, accessibility, transit, and transportation system continued. So one of the items we have on here is reduce the 2019 streets tax transfer to the general fund. This item is one that's ongoing, but we did make that 33% reduction in 2022. Implement 2021 streets capital improvement projects to maintain and improve streets infrastructure. 90% of all CIP streets will be completed by the end of November. And then moving on to sanitation, water, stormwater, solid waste, and recycling. We have two items listed as complete, and that is the complete the recyclables materials RFP and complete trash and recycle rate study. Any questions on this section? Okay, hearing none, I'll keep moving.
I do. I haven't memorized the study session, but under the stormwater management, will we be having a discussion of that sometime in the next couple of months? It's showing as caution.
With phase 3 of the stormwater management plan.
Hi, Council and Mayor. Phase 3 of the Stormwater Master Plan takes the Phase 1 and Phase 2 and generates a CIP plan based on the characteristics of what the flows anticipated and the current conditions of the stormwater system. So it really, we're looking at the end of the year as completion for that. We have We're currently inventorying the existing stormwater components that we have throughout the city and working with Mike, bringing those in from streets and catching our consistently flooding areas and making sure we get those included in our proposed updates. So the plan will actually be to implement the hydrologic model that was part of phase 2 to study what we anticipate being the best oriented plan for replacement going into, so
I'm not clear on what the outcome is.
okay, the outcome of phase 3 is a list of CIP projects for stormwater management.
And will that also have a funding proposal for how those will be addressed?
Yes, there will be funding proposals included as part of that. It's a consultant study, and they have a specialist who really focuses on that, and will be bringing some of that information back to us.
I'm sorry, can I clarify? By funding, I'm not talking the cost of the projects, but actually how to pay for them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. Okay, thank you.
And Devin, I had one more question on transit.
Okay.
If I could go back. It was noted, sorry, I missed this one, but it was noted that we were working to implement the bus routes for Highway 160 by the end of 2022. And I just wanted to kind of touch base on that and see if I can get an update. Do we have any idea when we might be able to reinstate that, or when we will look into it?
That one, we are looking to reinstate it. It was really a staffing and hiring drivers. And so Sarah has placed together a incentive package using some of our federal funding to get drivers going. And it did give us 4 applicants right off the bat to do so. So I need to check in with her. She's in quarantine right now. When she gets back and talk about exactly how that process went with 4. But I think we're getting very, very close to being able to have the drivers to get that Highway 160 route started.
Great news. Thank you.
Excellent. And before moving on, I apologize to Aviation. There's a couple items remaining too that are listed under cautionary. So we just talked about the stormwater. The other item is construct 32nd Street extended detention basin. And the latest update on that is with the loss of staff workload and the reorganization, staff has not had time to prepare a submittal to the dam safety office. An extension to the DOLA grant was applied for in August and approved in October. The DOLA grant has been extended to the end of December 2022. Another item that we have listed as cautionary is improve aging watershed pipes through rehabilitation. So we have completed manhole rehabilitation efforts at various locations within the city. And to design for other lining efforts, delayed due to pipe condition assessment needs, as well as a contractor delay. And then the third item we have listed as cautionary is develop performance indicator scorecard for water and watershed operations. So the latest update we have there is collecting monthly data for collections and distribution divisions in an effort to identify metrics for scorecard. So, and I already spoke about the 2 that are completed. Any questions on those ones?
There's one item there, review costs, needed improvements and options for providing waste recycling service, and there's no X indicating where the status of that. It's right in the center.
Oh, apologies. We will get that corrected when we post this.
Do you know the status on that?
I do not, so I can look to staff to see if they know the status on that particular item. Not a problem. It's review cost needed, improvements and operations for providing waste/recycling services.
Options, not
options, excuse me.
And I can get an answer to that. I don't have it offhand.
I think that's looking at the ideas for the new recycling transfer station and all of that. So I'm guessing that that's kind of status pending because we just finished a whole review. So I imagine you couldn't move forward with that until that review was finished.
Right, privatization, obviously looking at that was a piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure the overall status
Okay. Moving on then to aviation. So under aviation, we do not have any items that are listed as cautionary. We do have an item listed as completed, and that's facilitate the FAA required triennial full-scale exercise of airport emergency plan, and that was completed in April of 2021. Any questions on aviation? Okay. And then listed under asset management, the one item that we have under needs focus is complete the facilities assessment, and that is listed as, as needs focus, as that item was to be completed by end of fourth quarter. And so, any questions on those before I move on to diversity, equity, and inclusion? Okay.
The facilities assessment, Devin?
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry if I missed that. It says it's suggesting needs focus. Mm-hmm. And so are we targeting that for 2022 at some point? And what will that include?
Yes, we are targeting it for 2022. The facilities assessment would be really looking at our facilities and kind of what would be some of the needs that we have, and looking at the new, if there's a new, if we look at new city hall, police station, locations like that, that we might. That's just something that, as we looked at the plate, it got a little full, and that one didn't quite get onto it. So
right.
We'll focus, and we'll continue to work on it in 2022.
Excellent. I'm glad to see that.
Okay, so under diversity, equity, and inclusion, we have one item listed as complete, and that is the nationally recognized proclamations, and that was the 11 proclamations that had been brought to council as part of the DEI efforts. We also have the translation services, so utilize translation services to increase participation by represented community groups and identified city employees that are proficient in other languages, so American Sign Language or Spanish as examples. That is listed as complete. And then the final item that we have that is listed as status pending is create and establish an external communication plan with the intent to distribute and train staff on the plan for consistent messaging. This item will become a priority for however, they did have conflicting priorities for that particular item, so the plate got a little full, and again, that'll be pushed to 2022.
So Devin, I have a question on the one that's complete. Those that are proficient in Spanish and American Sign Language, how are we using their experience to benefit the city or our community?
I would have to defer to Aaron on that particular item.
Yeah, Aaron, it's you set a goal of identifying staff who are proficient in Spanish and or American Sign Language, and you're showing that is complete. So I'm assuming that there must be some people who are proficient in those two languages. And my question is, how are you then making use of their expertise and experience to benefit both the staff and the community?
Sorry about that. So we have both a stipend program that that's complete and ready to implement. I think at this point in time, what we're ready to do is discuss within the team of how we actually roll that out through the organization and how many folks we actually need based on the need demonstrated through the community. So I would say it's complete and prepared. Now we just have to put it in motion.
So they might participate in on-site simultaneous translation or something like that?
It'd be dependent on the needs requested, like as the requests come through the departments. Yeah. Because right now it's pretty vague and open.
Yeah, I'm just
have the specific needs identified. And
sure, I went specific, but I would assume that the process of identifying this, you had something in mind for how you would use their services.
Yeah, the way we approached it was a very vague approach of skilled folks based on the various languages identified that would be needed and most utilized through the community.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say there's some more work that needs to be done to implement and execute.
So maybe the first phase is complete.
Yes.
Okay. So then moving on to the final section in DEI, which is internal to city organizations and workforce. So we have 2 items listed as complete and 1 is cautionary. So the item that we have complete is complete a biannual employee racial equity survey. Racial equity survey of employees conducted by the GARE schedule for completion of March 13th, 2021. GARE will compile the results and report back to the city. Results will be analyzed and strategies to improve results formulated. So we have the item listed as complete. And then the next item we have that's listed as cautionary is develop targeted engagement education and training programs based on the results of employee racial equity survey. So the latest update we have on that is a partnership with CPS HR to develop a roadmap, including targeted education to be developed by end of year. And then the final item that we have complete is develop a policy for naming and renaming of city assets.
So question for you. So given this is the 3rd quarter update, when you say, for example, to be developed by end of year, you mean end of year 2021?
Yes, apologies.
Get the 4th quarter update, theoretically that should be complete then.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Devin, I have one more on this one. And it maybe show up later under quality of life or something. But it's my understanding the city's, particularly Parks and Rec, is going to look at its assets and the allocation of resources from a variety of measures, economic, geographic, ethnicity of community. Is that showing up here or in another location?
That is not listed on here. I believe that would be included under, are you talking about capital projects or the services?
In our parks, what's the quality of our parks and different? We've talked about a review using both GIS and the census data.
Okay, now, okay.
Equity, for equity issues, so I did not see it here.
Certainly. I believe that one is listed under financial excellence and transparency. We are working, we actually meet with Allison tomorrow to discuss how to include that ESRI tool and map it into our capital projects plan. And so we will be bringing that forth. Hopefully, it won't be for the January 18th, 4th quarter CIP report, but we're looking to bring that forth as our 1st quarter report for council to be able to see some of that census data that has all of that information inlaid in there about the demographics.
Thank you, and I recognize it's a cross-disciplinary measure. Thank you.
Certainly.
Can I ask a short question, but probably not the smartest one? I'm struggling a little bit with the strategic plan as a whole, because it seems some projects are added and then some of them do not show up. And I'm trying to grasp a little bit, is this a summary? Is this a document that gets updated continually? We will have a strategic plan review. Mm-hmm. To what degree and who makes the changes?
So I think probably you need more information on what you say that has been added or what has been changed.
Is all the line items in this strategic plan the same as it was when it was implemented the first time?
Yes.
So when I look, for example, there was one, explore and analyze library funding to expand hours and staffing. Is that something that was already a long time identified? Because this is on page 14 of 54. The blue ones, basically, some of the blue ones seem. That's page, sorry for not, I just pulled it up. And 14 maybe, is that 14? No, 9, sorry.
No, that's fine. So it's under enhanced livability and sense of place.
Let's start with this one. This is just an example. Yeah? By 2023, in blue, it says explore and analyze library funding to expand hours and staffing. Was that from the beginning? It
yes.
was on that? Mm-hmm. There's no changes to this whole strategic plan unless it's an update to an existing identifier?
Yes.
Okay. And then I hope I'm not out of context here, but we're going to go through this plan. and update it, correct?
You
Not
are
now?
going to, no, it's a partnership. And so I think that's the biggest part of it is the council sets the goals, and then we come back with the strategy and the individual projects with it. And then we have a discussion on it and we go through and then get an approval process with it. So it's not where we look at that operations and policy setting. As you start getting below the goals and below the strategy, that really becomes staff in our area of what we're doing, our operations and projects. The council portion is the goals and the strategies that we're looking to implement.
That's because we seem to go into a lot of level of detail and maybe veer off what is exactly stated here. And I'm trying to understand to what degree does this get established by staff with our input or our direction, and at what point in time? So what is the next steps for us? For me, I mean, this is my first effort here.
Next steps so we do have a meeting coming up scheduled with Patrick Ibarra, who is our facilitator who does that. He will be reaching out with you beforehand, having individual conversations to kind of tomorrow for some, I'm not sure it's on your calendar, that will talk about how, what you see in the plan, what are some of the goals and objectives that you would like to change or discuss, then you will have that discussion as a council. When you look at the goals and the strategic objectives, those that would get changed and get the majority of the council will then go to staff. Staff takes that and then begins to redevelop the projects that go underneath it. We present it back to the council at a study session. The study session, we received direction from the council in regards to did we hit the mark with what we were looking for? And then after that, it comes back to the council for approval.
And that happens all before April, I guess.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Appreciate it. So I won't dig into too much details. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so moving on to environmental and social sustainability. We have a couple items listed as cautionary on here. So one of the items is implement the sustainability action plan, in which departments have key performance indicators related to reducing their carbon footprint. So with the staffing changes, the plan was in a draft, so early 22 completion is anticipated. As far as the other cautionary item, we have educate the community on Durango's carbon footprint and ways to reduce emissions through multimodal transportation options and other events such as Bike to Work Day. And again, that has the same description there as well, with a early 2022 completion anticipated. So we have under the increased availability of renewable energy, we have two items listed as completed. So amend the land use development code to establish an electric vehicle infrastructure standard for new development. So code adoption was in October of 2021. And then the other one that's listed as completed is initiate quarterly meetings with La Plata Electric Association and other key stakeholders to identify a pathway of achieving adopted renewable electricity goals. It's listed as completed, but it's also on track with ongoing meetings. So there's a kind of a twofer there. And then the item that's listed as cautionary is pursue opportunities to support and increase renewable electricity generation in line with the community and municipal goals that achieve a 50% renewability electricity by 2030 and 100% by 2050. And we have energy contract performance initiative under review. And then finally, under improved quality of natural resources, we have an item that's listed as complete, protect infrastructure with fire mitigation in Durango wildland urban interface. So we have 6 miles and 36 acres completed. We have 2 items listed as cautionary under here. So continue community forest tree planting with a stewardship by planting new trees annually and prune 5% of existing maintained trees each year. So we have that at 5% of existing trees inventory pruned, 198 new trees planting. And again, we had some staffing shortages there that impacted the total numbers of trees planted. And then the final cautionary one we have is partner with CDOT and La Plata County to complete the Grandview Access Plan. So we have retirements and reorgs load CDOT and city's response to getting information to consultant, leading the project to be a couple months behind. Project is about 70% complete. CDOT hopes it will be completed by 2021, but likely to roll into early 2022. Any questions on those items? Okay.
So the last one, establish a diversion rate of waste that can be instead recycled and a goal of how much waste is generated per capita. That's under status pending with no comment.
Yes, and I would have to defer to Kevin for that one, or Allison.
Again, I will need to get more information to respond effectively on.
Okay, thank you.
And last but not least, under social sustainability. So we have 3 projects listed as complete on here. And so we have improve the city brand by coordinating with counselor staff. Numbers of Notify Me to improve communications of city operations internally and externally. We have improved performance metrics of public requests for administrative help. So set a goal of responding to core requests, 90% in under 3 days, and responding to liquor licenses with 90% of maximum days needed. And we have that listed as this goal is achieved on a daily basis. And then finally, we have increased the website hits on the agenda and minutes page by 10% over the next year by collaborating with the Media and Community Engagement Office. And we have that listed as complete as well. Any questions on those items? Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Devin, thank you. This is huge progress. When we think about a year ago, we didn't have a strategic plan at all, ever, from the city, and now we're getting regular updates. And I also want to echo Melissa's comment about the transparency that we can get online and actually see this, which is a huge transformation for the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would agree with that. I love the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thanks. That's all.
I loved how in the documentation, I could just click on the section that would take me specifically to that part of the strategic plan without having to scroll through everything. And I realized that's probably on the OpenGov website that way too, so you can just click, which is great.
It is. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. We're on to the review of the consent agenda. The consent agenda is intended to allow the City Council by a single motion to approve matters that are considered routine or non-controversial. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests an item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered under agenda item 9. May we have a reading of the consent agenda, please?
Items 7.1 through 7.4. 7.1, the minutes from the November 7th regular meeting. 7.2, the minutes from the December 7th special meeting. 7.3, the minutes from the December 7th study session. And 7.4, the minutes from the December 14th special meeting. Items 7.5 through 7.8 are discussion and possible action items. 7.1 concerns the approval of the lodger's tax policy. 7.6 concerns Resolution R 2022-1, authorizing an appropriation for the Gray and Black Market Marijuana Enforcement Grant Program Award, closing by May 31, 2023. 7.7 concerns requirements of the city to comply with the State Sunshine Act. 7.8 concerns a retroactive 2021 3% cost of living adjustment and a 2022 5% increase in salary for the city manager and the city attorney. Items 7.9 through 7.11 are requests for public hearings with a proposed date of January 18, 2022. 7.9 is to consider the River Roost minor preliminary subdivision. 7.10 is to consider the Animas City Park Overlook conceptual and preliminary plan. And 7.11 is to consider commercial parking lot patio, land use and development code, LUDC text amendment.
Thank you very much, Ms. Phillips. Are there any items that councilors would like to remove from the consent agenda?
Yes, I'd like to remove 7.5, please.
Any others? Do we have a motion to approve all consent agenda items with the exception of 7.5?
So moved.
Second.
May we have a vote, please?
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you. And item 7.5, discussion and possible action regarding the approval of a lodger's tax policy. Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Thank you. Yes. First of all, I appreciate all the effort on the part of everyone, the working groups on council to put that together. What my concern with this is that at the previous study session, under the section around marketing, I expressed my concern on two things: that I didn't want 75 and 25% allocations to be hard and fast at any time. And one of the things that we came up with was that at a minimum, those suggested guidelines would be reviewed annually. And I believe there was consensus to have that change made, and I didn't see it in the documentation.
So if that is the direction of council, certainly, this is your policy. We can remove that if that's,
I don't want to remove anything. I just want to make certain it's very clear that it's a guideline and that that percentage, which was proposed by the working group that Councilor Youssef and the mayor worked on, is reviewed annually. So it's not, we're not stuck with a 75-25% rate in perpetuity.
Can we just look at the minutes or the recording and clarify if that was indeed an agreed upon council decision or if it was not?
I don't remember what we agreed upon, but I'm fine with the annual.
So is it my understanding that you want to review this policy annually?
That section is what we discussed, not the whole policy, just the section that allocates 75% for marketing externally and 25% for local organizations. I felt that was too prescriptive in perpetuity, and my recollection of the discussion is that it was actually someone else's suggestion to have it reviewed annually, and that was an acceptable change.
So would you want to make a motion then to accept item 7.5 with that change that that's...
I'm happy to.
Reviewed annually, and then we can vote on that?
Yep.
I would like to ask something though. I would prefer to review the meeting that was held and stick with that decision, or pull it off the agenda under that context.
So, but I believe Councilor Noseworthy are making a motion to that effect.
I'm making a motion that to support the proposed policy with the amendment that the section on tourism, marketing tourism, the 75% for external tourism and 25% for local events is a guideline and is reviewed on an annual basis.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Discussion? That would be, I'm sorry, Councilor Bosmans, that would be when we'd have this conversation then. So if you want to bring that up.
My opinion is that we discussed this. Apparently, we don't know exactly what was agreed. I would like to see the meetings or the recording of that meeting, and staff say we actually decided and agreed on A, B, or C, whatever it was, and then we can bring it back. That's my opinion. So I would not like to change it unless I look at them, and I don't have time now to look at the meeting. So.
I feel like, not saying that that's wrong or right, or I don't remember what we agreed upon, but in the spirit of efficiency, we can just kind of see if you agree with this or not, and then vote on it and move forward.
I'm going to look at them.
For my discussion, I would just say that to support Councilor Beal's comment, regardless of the minutes, if it was or isn't, if any counselor finds something that they find objectionable or missing, we have the opportunity to say that, which I'm doing right now. And I've made what I think is a important change that provides clarity, because unless this policy changes, the allocations, it's going to be a long time that we're living with this.
I I see no problem with having flexibility. If council every year wants to revisit and just decide what that looks like.
It seems like
No harm in it, so.
Yeah, I would agree with that too, that an annual review, it will have different councils. And so it allows the opportunity for different councilors to weigh in.
So may we have a vote, please?
Can I ask one more time? What was the exact motion you made?
My motion was to accept the proposed policy with the exception that the section that provides for the marketing, both external and internal constituents, is presented as a guideline that is reviewed on an annual basis. It's the 75%, 25% allocation.
So would it be fixed for 1 year to those percentages, or would it be a guideline for that 1 year?
So that the policy right now states 75, 25%, and I believe what Mayor Pro Tem is requesting is that that policy be revisited every year. So the policy right now would go forward as 75, 25 for this coming year, and then be revisited next year to see if councils wanted to make an adjustment.
So it's not a guideline,
It is the policy for 2020.
It's the policy.
And would be reviewed again for 2023.
Yeah, that's fine by me.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nosworthy,
Yes.
Councilor Bosman,
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Beck.
Yes, thank you. So now we're on to public hearings. Let's see, so 10.1, legislative and policy-related hearings. 10.1.1, a public hearing to consider an ordinance amending Chapter 25, Article 3, Section 25-114 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Durango for the purposes of modifying sewer rates for residential, commercial, and industrial users of the wastewater system and the City of Durango service area. And we have Jared Biggs here to give us a presentation on this, or discussion.
Good evening, council members, Mayor. This is a change in sewer rates that was originally discussed at the IAB meeting on November 8th. At that meeting, after a lot of great discussion, the IAB did make the recommendation to increase sewer rates by 3% on the base rate only. Or to affect that by using the base rate. And so this ordinance, as it is drafted, is to make that adjustment of 3% to pretty much keep up with inflation and keep us ahead of our debt covenants that exist for the wastewater plant. So.
Thank you. So I'll open the public hearing. Are there any public comments on this? And do we have any virtual comments?
No virtual comments.
Wonderful. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Council, do you have any questions for staff or comments on?
I have a question on this, but I'm trying to figure out if this should be under the public hearing one or under the ordinance. There's an agenda item 12.1 for the sewer rate as well. So where would you prefer me to make my questions and comments?
I don't know, because I don't know what your question is. Maybe Mr. Nelson can help.
I think it's appropriate to ask now, then staff can answer it when we get to the ordinance portion. We'll have closed the hearing, so.
Okay.
We'll do it now.
All right. Jared, I have a concern with the guideline and the recommendation that was given by the Infrastructure Advisory Board. I looked at all the agenda packages and I listened to them, and I think the key problem that I see is that the presentation that they made was based on a presentation that shows a sewer fund balance that was anticipated to be negative $704,000 at the end of 2022. And I think that was the key deciding factor why they voted to increase the sewer rates. Now, if I look at the budget, the adopted budget, so the more accurate numbers, I guess, it shows a sewer fund balance of 5.3 I have the documents. I just pulled them up anyway. I think the problem is that the fund balances that the Infrastructure Advisory Board looked at and made their recommendation on were either not exactly what they were, or they were partially operational or excluding, or whatever it is, but it's not a solid amount of data and facts that they used. And I think this ties a little bit back to what my concern is, that we need to make sure that numbers are consistent and correct, and in a manner presented that these boards have to make good recommendations on what they believe is accurate information. And I'm sure there's a misunderstanding somewhere along the line, so I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just trying to say, I think the Infrastructure Advisory Board should look at this again with the numbers that finance can produce, and then make a recommendation on whatever the percentage.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy.
Yes, thank you. If
liaison to the IAB, maybe.
As the liaison, and Jared stayed there because but I do want to say what I heard in the meeting, and I continue to hear this in every meeting, which is that the base rate in an appropriate rate implementation plan, the base rate should cover your fixed costs. And our current base rate for sewer, we know, because we have the debt, we have a very good understanding of what our fixed costs are, and our base rate currently comes nowhere close to covering that. So it was I'm trying to remember the discussion. I believe it was a unanimous vote on all parts. I'd have to go back on that part. Led by Mr. Simpson, I actually will say, who argued quite persuasively for preparing your budgets around what you know you're going to have costs around, thus protecting the users based on their consumption. So it's my understanding there was a different conversation around this, and the base rate was resolved over sewer, and it's still a question over water. So and we can discuss that at another time, but I did want to, as the liaison who's been deeply engaged in this, provide my recollection, and if you differ with me, please let me know.
And I would say, I listened to the tape preparing for this meeting. And so we did discuss very particularly, I remember Mr. Devine brought up the fact that, hey, this sewer fund is at a negative position. And we talked about particularly a receivable that we have on the books that is really driving a big difference in that rate or that fund balance level. I did, as preparation for this meeting, go to the audit from 2020, the finished audit. We had 3.2 million available. I think in that conversation, we did talk about that receivable, about being at approximately $3 million, and really talked a lot about how whether we should try to jump ahead of inflationary factors or wait for them to catch up to us. And ultimately, it was a unanimous recommendation to take a 3% step in light of inflationary factors that we're looking at about 5 to 9% in some cases. So.
If I may, I'm not sure if you allow me, but the Infrastructure Advisory Board, your presentation shows revenues of about 8 million in the sewer and expenses about 6, 7 in that order of magnitude. So I just want to clarify to Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy that operating is well below revenues. And I think the key concern I have is that the number that they looked at was a negative fund balance at the end of 2022, which is which would be for anybody a reason to increase rates. And I think I'm not going to dig through the numbers. I just bring this concern up because if you look at the numbers and you make a decision or recommendation, and we end up making a decision upon it, I feel that the most prudent thing to do is to run it back to the Infrastructure Advisory Board with accurate numbers that do not show, and the difference is huge. Yeah? It's the difference. I'm going to just repeat that for the record. The difference is minus $700,000 versus a ending balance of $5.3 million. So that's a difference of $6 million. Just pointing that out. And again, there must be a reason for it. I'm not saying that that is a loss or something got missing. I'm just saying that whatever was presented might not be the full number of the fund balance or partially whatever. And I don't know. I don't want to know at this point, but hopefully you can look into it. So my concern is that I cannot rely on a recommendation that is made on incorrect numbers, and it's visible in the documentation from the meeting. It's visible in the budget numbers. So.
Counselor, if I may, my understanding of that discussion was that we were including the CIP budget that was showing a projected negative at the end of the year without a revision to the rates at that time. So my understanding is that it's not incorrect. It was a different look than our actual budget for 2022, which was based on revenues.
Yeah, I'm going to apologize, but I'm looking at the numbers right now, the budget and the presentation. And I would just strongly encourage you to look at it again, bring it back to the Infrastructure Advisory Board, because I can point out the differences, but I don't want to do it in this setting.
Yes, and that is unfortunate. That does put us in a situation where we keep circling back, which is there a way we could review it with you separately? We have Mayor Pro Tem who is there, who does interact very significantly with the board at that time. So I don't get the feeling that we're in a position where we're keeping information back till the last minute.
No. Okay. No. If you want to bring it back to the Infrastructure Advisory Board and you tell me when that is, I would be very happy to attend that meeting, and I will make sure that I assume you're going to end up with the same numbers as the financial statements and the budget, so hopefully there's no confusion there. So I would be happy when the next meeting is.
Okay. Well,
I will oppose that.
I will look to council's guidance.
Excuse me, Jared, could you come to the microphone, please?
By all means.
Mayor, Council, may I ask just a clarifying, Camp? Sure. Was the information that was provided the Infrastructure Advisory Board accurate?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I don't, if that's, can I jump in real quick? I think that the information, if Mayor Pro Tem says that it was accurate, and if Jared says it was accurate, and that is what the Infrastructure Advisory Board is suggesting, I will support the ordinance.
So, Dirk, this is for you question. Is there any decision council needs to make?
No.
Come up at 12?
No, yeah.
Great, okay.
We'll take up the ordinance at a later item.
Great. So is there any further question or discussion for Jared or Allison about this topic?
I'm just struggling to see how I can resolve this. So, and I'm going to just point it out very clearly. If anybody's interested in seeing this, on the Infrastructure Advisory Board agenda meeting packet from 11/8 on page 534, you will see the budget for the sewer. And if you take the budget, the adopted budget, you will find the same sewer budget split up in operational and capital projects, and there is a significant difference. So if I understand that that some people might not see that as a concern. To me, this is a very serious concern, and I'm struggling how to make this into something that this council takes serious.
So, Councilor Bosmans, I don't think that any of us are unconcerned about things that seem challenging. We've discussed this before, and I think one of the major things that we need to do to support council and staff is if you have questions of this nature about something, to please put it in an email to staff and copy council on it with the appropriate documents so we can all look at it and be fully informed. I can't look at what you're looking at now. Staff doesn't know what you're looking at. They can't even begin to answer your question. Now, what that does is it lets us all know and lets us all do our research so that when we come to this item in a public hearing, you can still ask that same question, but then we might all understand what you're referring to, and we might have a resolution to it, rather than having to wait for another IAB meeting and another city council meeting. So I think that this just really highlights the need to communicate with staff and communicate with council when you have very, very valid questions and concerns, so we all know what they are and we can all understand them for ourselves, because I can't even make a comment to what you're saying because I don't know what it is you're saying. So I would highly suggest that in the future, so we don't have this kind of conversation again, that all counselors let staff and other council know what their concerns are so that we can be informed and ready to have that conversation. That would be my request.
I appreciate that feedback. I just want to point out, this is not something that I'm aware of 2 weeks ago. So I
know, but this agenda item did not come out until, I believe we got it on Thursday or Friday. So if you learned about it this morning, great. But if you learned about it over the weekend and figured it out, that's the request, is to please try to do that. That's the request.
And if I may add.
Last point was, I also struggle with me pointing out things and then somehow it comes back to me doing something wrong. I'm pointing out something, that's it. And however the other four councilors look at that, that is everybody's individual vote.
Olivia, I don't think anyone is suggesting that you're doing anything wrong. As a matter of fact, what we're suggesting is that you may have observed something that some of us haven't. And the only way that we can give validity to that or take it seriously the way we should is to have that information up front. It is not that you've done anything wrong. It's a request to improve the way council and staff can communicate and the way that we can make decisions.
And if I may add, Jared, I know that there are times when you might give a presentation that doesn't necessarily make it to the agenda packet, and I'm not certain if it's added. But I often remember presentations that we might get, right on the same as we're discussing it. So I do want to recognize in that regard. So to your comment, Councilor Bosmans, I don't think anyone does not take seriously the reserve balances and the statement. Let me reiterate that the rate structure and the base fees have been an ongoing discussion at regular IAB meetings. There's been question about how they were arbitrarily decided on a certain percentage, and there's been a regular and continuing conversation that the base fees need to cover the operation, and this was the ultimate vote on that.
Are there any further comments or questions? Or
I was just going to make potentially a suggestion. This item is up for first reading, and there will be a second reading, so I asked the question of Dirk. If we can potentially proceed at first reading and hopefully answer this question and get whatever information you need, Councilor Bosmans, then I think it's going to come back at second reading on the 18th, and hopefully we will resolve that by then. But if not, we can bring it up then as well.
And I am happy to meet. I am happy to meet with you, Councilor Bosmans, staff, and if necessary, the chair of the IAB, to help answer any questions or clarify any understanding.
Let's get clarification from Dirk. Would what Jared recommended be a viable procedure?
The ordinance will not be effective until its second reading. We do occasionally make changes to ordinances between first reading and second, not often, but occasionally, and it's possible. That's the reason for the process. So if you approve it on first reading tonight, it will require a second reading. The second readings are typically put on consent. So we'll need to know that if there is an issue with the second reading, we'll not put it on consent and put it on the agenda for a discussion item on second reading.
Okay. So what I would like to recommend to council is that we take that process and do that process. Councilor Bosman's informs us all with appropriate documents where they are and what he's looking at, and his questions for staff as well as council. Copies us on all of that so we can do our own research, see what you're doing. And then I would recommend that we not put the second reading on the consent agenda because of this conversation. It go as a separate item just to make sure that everybody's clear and the public knows we had the conversation and knows the outcome. Is that something you all can support?
Absolutely.
Yes, I'll support that.
Just to fix that one, it's the agenda item 11.8 of the Infrastructure Advisory Board meeting, available on the City of Durango website under meetings, page 534. Thank you.
I don't know. I don't even know what to say to that. So we have support for that process.
Yes. Real quick, I just would like to say, because this has happened right now and then a little bit in the study session, I don't think it's about being right or wrong. You kept on saying about right or wrong. It's about the integrity of the process and us realizing what that process was and just going over it. And then even if we don't agree, it doesn't mean we still support each other and the integrity of the process. It doesn't mean we don't like you or you're wrong. It just means this is the process. And I don't like that, like when you say, like, how do I get you to see? You don't get me to see anyway, and especially not by talking to fellow counselors that way. I would appreciate it if you respected us in the same way that we respect you and listen to you, if that makes sense.
I have no problems with what you say.
Okay, so do we have direction for staff on this? Okay. And Olivier, you will be providing us with all that information.
I just did.
Olivier, please, you'll be providing us in an email to staff and all of council with the information so that we can see what you're seeing. Thank you. Okay, on to item 12, introduction of ordinances. 12.1, an ordinance amending Chapter 25, Article 3, Section 25-114 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Durango for the purpose of modifying sewer rates for residential, commercial, and industrial users of the wastewater system within the City of Durango service area and declaring an effective date.
Yes, this will be ordinance 2022-1, and it is the ordinance that follows the discussion for the public hearing, which would be first reading on a 3% increase in the base rates for sewer.
Are there any questions or comments by council for Mr. Nelson?
Will we be continuing that then, Mr.
No,
Nelson?
we'll be doing the first reading tonight.
Okay, but, okay.
Second reading.
Right.
2 weeks from now.
Yeah, and just to be clear, if there's a change in the ordinance that's required, we could make that change. Or if council determines that it's not appropriate to adopt the ordinance, then you don't adopt it on second reading and it just fails.
Okay. But if we don't adopt this particular one tonight, the first reading, then that puts us off a whole 2 weeks. But we have a way of mitigating that circumstance if we choose to.
Okay.
Do we have a motion?
Does that have a number?
Oh, yes, do we have a number?
It's 2022-1.
I move that we approve resolution.
Ordinance
022-1.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? May we have a vote, please?
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Desmordy?
Yes.
Councilor Bosman?
No.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes, thank you. On to administrative 13, Mr. Madden. Action to appoint a city representative to the La Plata County Regional Housing Alliance Board of Directors. Mr. Hall.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Kevin Hall, Managing Director, Community Development. This is a relatively straightforward administrative item. As you've been talking over the months, we are in the process of reinstituting a fully functional regional housing authority, the La Plata County Regional Housing Alliance. And back in November, the council approved the intergovernmental agreement that essentially reconstitutes the organization relative to what the board membership looks like. And at the time of the IGA approval, there was only 4 board members, of which Mayor Baxter was representative for the city, and then the other 3 entities, La Plata County, Bayfield, and Ignacio, each had a member. Through the adoption of the new IGA and the kind of the reconstitution of the organization, the board membership goes to 9, of which 2 from each of the representative organizations, as well as 1 at large, which the board will decide who that is. It has not been decided yet. For the city of Durango, what is happening here is we're recommending that Eva Henson, the city's recently hired Housing Innovation Program Manager, would become the second representative representing the city on the board of directors for the RHA. So this is essentially an action by motion. If you're supportive of doing so, we would make Eva that second representative for the city.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Mr. Hall? Or for me, since I'm the
I do have a question. When we were talking earlier about updates on the housing, and I because we'd gone so long, I didn't want to ask it. Will the RHA board or your representation or Eva, will they also, and as part of this update, not only what the city's doing, but an update overall, and maybe it's your monthly meetings that you update us all on efforts underway?
So I think those are 2 separate questions, because what the city is doing is one thing and what the RHA is doing is another, and they may be connected, but they don't necessarily have to be. So I would be happy to give, as I always do, an update whenever we have the RHA meeting so that you know where it's going. When we get down into details of projects or funding or something, Eva might be a better person to actually have that conversation with you because of her breadth of knowledge of other things. So I think we can be flexible in that and make sure that you have the information.
I just also thought it would be helpful with her attending those meetings to incorporate any relevant data into her dashboards.
That's a challenge, because we actually talked about something similar to that today with Marcia Porter Norton, Commissioner Norton. And the challenge is that the RHA represents more than just the city of Durango. And so to separate out some of that might be just a little challenging, not that it couldn't be done, but I would recommend that we start in the beginning with a city focused presentation and an RHA focused presentation. And then as things actually start get moving where they overlap, to start combining that. Thank you. That's what I would recommend. Any further questions or discussion? Do we have a motion to appoint Eva Henson as the second board representative for the RHA for the city of Durango?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? May we have a vote, please?
Councilor Beal?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Bosman?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nesbitt?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. On to 13.2, discussion and possible action to appoint members to the Wildfire and Watershed Protection Fund Advisory Committee. Who is leading this discussion?
I prepared the agenda doc, so I'll quickly.
Right.
This is the follow-up to the recent approval of the MOU to create the Wildfire and Watershed Protection Fund, and that MOU provided that the city would appoint 2 members to that board. So I'd certainly have a recommendation. I will say that Turi Nykum, the Park and Rec Director, indicated that he thought it would be appropriate for council to consider a member of Park and Rec staff who've been involved in wildfire issues to date to be appointed. But, again, this is just a follow-up. So council, I think initially may want to talk about how you want to appoint. There are some criteria set forth in that MOU that was spelled out in the agenda doc to be considered when appointing a person. But this is really a process that council needs to decide how you want to proceed.
Dirk, doesn't the MOU provide for elected officials to be?
No, it just says appointments, and I think I quoted the line in front of me, but the agenda doc, if anybody has it, I quoted the language out of the agreement. So it doesn't actually require that it could be an elected official, but you could appoint whomever you want. And I don't know what other entities are going to do. Again, the county will appoint 2 and DOPD will appoint 2.
I believe that, and I can't pull it up for some reason, it's not cooperating, but it has to do with the goal of the Wildfire group is to have expert people on their board.
That's right.
I have it right here. If you want. It says appoint members who have backgrounds, education, or experience in forestry, forest and watershed health, improvement and restoration, natural resource management, wildfire mitigation, local government, or similar subjects that will aid the purposes of this agreement and the fund.
Wonderful. So based upon that, do we have any conversation, suggestion, discussion?
I mean, is there someone on Parks and Rec staff or not?
Yeah. So Amy?
Amy, yeah.
Yeah.
Amy has been really highly involved in this and done a great job for the city in that 6 miles that we just acknowledged today. I think she would be a great asset. I've worked with her prior to being on council on committees, and I find her to be very informed and intelligent and aware and thoughtful and looks at the big picture as well as knows the details. So I personally think she would be a great choice. And if at this point in time, council doesn't have another, expert or someone with expertise, a council member to begin with, because this is a new organization and having a policymaker there might be a really good idea.
2 positions.
I know, so Amy and a city council member. And that way, as the year progresses, and then next year we could have the conversation again, and maybe we do have an expert or someone who has experience that we have a better idea for, but the policymakers have had input in the beginning of how it all structures and gets set up.
I think it makes good sense to have a staff member actually too, because it's going to require a lot of work up front to get this, keep this momentum up. Now that we've handed it over and signed the MOU, so I would support Amy.
I definitely would support Amy. I have 2 questions. I also could see, although it's a new position, I could also see Marty Poole as the sustainability person involved, because it involves a variety of issues. And we benefited from Imogene's service before. So this is actually coming to me new to think about. I definitely support a staff member. I just think that either one of them could serve very well and in different capacities.
And so if it were one staff member and one counselor, how would you feel about that concept?
I think for this first year, having at least one elected official on this board is important as it's getting set up, and I think there's some continuity issues that could benefit from that.
And I think as a reminder, there's a stagger involved, so I think we need to pick. As I recall, there was one member that would serve a year, and then the other one would serve 2. So if you want to appoint tonight, I would suggest that you indicate which.
So for example, staff members, the 2-year, and the counselor is the 1 or something like that.
That would be one suggestion, yeah. That would make sense.
So you 2 have been so involved in this.
Yeah.
Of course, I want to hear what Councilor Bosman has to say and Councilor Buell, but you 2 have been so involved in this. Do you have a thought about which city council? I don't want to.
I'm fine. Councilor Noseworthy, if you want to serve on that, I would be absolutely fine to support that, your role in that, or I would support him. We need to continue this as a council. I do think that it's important. So, and I think we've really come a very long way, so I don't have any doubt that we will continue it, but just being that liaison and be able to come back and keep us updated with their progress would be great for anyone who would like to serve.
And I also will reiterate that while it's been a real joy working on this with Melissa and Marcia and others, and I'm happy to continue, I'm also happy to have anyone else who might be interested in serving consider such a position. I will add that there's upcoming meetings that need to be on people's schedules.
Yes.
And
you 2 are way too kind.
They do meet regularly.
Councilor Bosmans, do you have any thoughts about it?
I think both people that were recommended would be good.
Okay, Councilor Buell, how do you?
Yeah, I'm a little maxed out, and I do support Amy and whoever you guys think.
Okay, so I'm gonna say you two probably need to be the decision factor for who the council person is.
Rochambeau.
What do you think, Barbara?
You know, I'm happy to serve, but I'm also happy to be a backup for you.
I very much would support your service.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we probably would like to have a motion that appoints, and I can't remember Amy's last name right now. Schwartzbach, thank you. Amy Schwartzbach and Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy to the Wildfire and Watershed Protection Fund Advisory Committee.
And I would suggest that you nominate one for a...
Let me finish.
I'm sorry.
And so that Amy's term would be 2 years and the Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy's term would be 1 year. So that's the motion I'm hoping to hear.
So moved.
Second.
And under discussion, I'd just like to add that if Amy can't attend any session, we might approach Marty Poole as a backup for representation there.
I would suggest that staff could probably.
Yeah, you could do that. I mean, you might consider that.
Any further discussion or comments on this item? No. May we have a vote, please?
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Councilor Bachman?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Beck?
Yes. 13.3 city update. Do we have a city update, Mr. Madrigal?
We do. Thank you, Mayor and Council. First one, city engineers approved the opening of Zyme Rock Road at the Grandview Roundabout near Three Springs. I hope I said that correctly. This will soon serve future developments, including a new Maverick gas station and Durango Joe's Coffee drive-through. The city is launching the public process to design an underpass below Camino del Rio near 12th Street for bicyclists and pedestrians. Members of city boards and commissions will meet Tuesday, January 11th from 1 to 5:30 to collaborate and form their vision for the project. The public may view the meeting virtually via durangogov.org/Zoom. The Durango Public Works, we are seeking snowplow operators to join our team and are offering up to $500 a month incentive during the winter months. So if you're interested in joining the team, we definitely encourage you to check out that opening. Christmas trees can be dropped off for recycling at Santa Rita Park December 18th through January 31st. The city reminds there is no curbside pickup of Christmas trees. Residents may drop off their natural trees free of ornaments and tinsels. And if you're gathering up used holiday gift wrapping and ribbon, please remember the city does not accept these items in the recycling stream. Wrapping, bows, and ribbons should go in the trash. Chapman Hill is open, so winter break hours are from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Call 970-375-7395 for information or visit durangogov.org/Chapman Hill. Also, we do have city crews will be hauling snow from the Central Business District starting at 12:01 on January 6th until 8 a.m. So please do not park in the no parking 2 to 5 a.m. areas. Vehicles will need to be ticketed and towed after 2 a.m. And then also I am going to ask Aaron Hyder, our Managing Director of Internal Cultural Services, to provide a update on some information we received this afternoon on our COVID status in the community.
Before Aaron, you move on, may I ask a question about the Christmas tree drop-off? Where specifically at Santa Rita Park?
If you drive in to Santa Rita Park and you just go straight like you're gonna go into the put-in, it's like to the left of the put-in.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Appreciate that. As soon as I read it, I was like, someone's gonna ask and I don't have the answer, so I very much appreciate it.
She's been there.
I've been there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Aaron, yeah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So tonight's update at the San Juan Basin Health Weekly Executive Policy Meeting. You know, it was super interesting because the information provided is reflecting what we've been seeing nationally across the United States and larger cities, and is starting to appear in our community at a similar rate of occurrence with COVID cases. And so I wanted to share some key high-level updates for Council. I did join a bit late, where they provide detailed statistics specific around like the county and the hospital capacity and utilization, but I did capture some summary updates. So as always, the team does provide a detailed recap that comes out after the meeting. It usually comes out tomorrow morning or tonight. So if you're looking for specific statistics that I don't speak to, it will for sure be in there. So real quickly, the ICU numbers are the highest since the pandemic started here in our community. Per the dashboard on San Juan Basin Health's site, our 1 week positivity rate is 28%. And so just remember, a positivity rate is the percent of total tests that result in a positive result. For comparison, at our last meeting on December 20th, our positivity rate here was 6%. And then on the dashboard, we have 87 new cases reported today. In Colorado overall, the testing positivity is over 20%. This is, yesterday was the highest rate of the last 22 months. A lot of those are reinfections or breakthrough cases. And really the concern with that is the increased risk of the rate of transmission amongst unvaccinated folks. The current estimation is 1 in 10 Coloradans are infectious, and that is based on true positives or tested positives, then replicated over our population. The reality, and that it's probably 1 in 7 or 1 in 5, and this is based on lack of testing. And what we'll see here and what I'm gonna speak to in a second is the lack of availability of testing. They really express that we're about to see that all resources related to COVID are going to be beyond capacity in the immediate future. So that could be either hospital care systems and testing in particular. So Leanne spoke a lot about how in the state of Colorado, there are no more rapid tests available, like that aren't already like in our possession, right? There's no more to distribute, and then we should expect a significant increase in potential break on our community testing facilities. So what that means also is any and all symptomatic people need to quarantine because they're more than likely not going to be able to get tested, or they're not going to be able to get timely results of their tests. And then so we should really be considering all these folks as probable cases, right? We're not calling them probable cases, but we should treat them as this, and then folks should quarantine. There was discussion around, there was a question within the group regarding the state mask mandate. The state is still not considering a statewide mask mandate order. What was interesting was the health providers on the call, so our hospitalists and the doctors on the call, they were going to have a separate conversation regarding, and I don't want to misspeak here, but Leanne really spoke about how we have the capability for our hospital providers, our healthcare providers, to have a conversation around a local mask mandate that's driven by healthcare providers. And she related that to, and that's statewide. And she talked about the process around that. And the other update was that really there was a discussion around at this time, given the increase, cases within our community and the hospital capacity, around the increase in the cadence of these meetings. Right now we meet weekly on Mondays. And so that hopefully we'll sign up soon. There wasn't a decision made tonight. There was a lot of folks on the call that were with the different school districts in the jurisdiction, and they're having a separate meeting. I think it was Thursday. So after that, there was going to be more discussion around increasing the cadence of these meetings. I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have. I did take a lot of notes, but.
So how many of the positive cases are ending up in the hospital?
And that's the piece I missed.
Sorry?
That's the piece I missed.
Well, I think that's a critical piece, because if people are not needing hospitalization and they're experiencing COVID, but they case, I think that's a much different discussion than if 85% of the people who are testing positive are needing to be hospitalized. So I personally would really appreciate having more information, and you said that would probably be coming out tomorrow.
Yep, that's usually when we see it.
And so you'll make sure that all of council receives that?
Yep, I can make sure I forward that. Now, there was discussion, what they are seeing, what Leanne shared was, what we know is that the new variant is less severe. We know that vaccines are keeping people from dying. What we don't know is if the increase, if the quantity of the increase is gonna overburden that hospital capacity need that we need, particularly as it impacts unvaccinated people. So that's essentially what you're asking is, like, yes, we're seeing more cases, but how many folks are being hospitalized? So I don't have that metric, but she did speak that what we're seeing is, yes, it's less severe. However, it's way more transmissible. So it's unknown how many people then will impact and increase the number of hospital care that's needed. although they anticipate the hospital care that's needed will increase also.
Mayor, I usually attend that meeting, and they're usually on Mondays, but because of the holiday, they had it tonight, so I wasn't able to attend. The situation communication always describes the availability of ICU beds among the 4 hospitals, and it shows the trend, what it's looking at. It also provides the number of people hospitalized with COVID. It also provides a bed availability among the 4 hospitals.
Right, so it's a statewide or?
No, it's a regional.
Okay, so regional wide, but I'd also like to know locally what our hospitalization rate is for positive tests.
That's been hard to get. We've been able to get it from Cortez, the 2 hospitals in Durango and Pagosa, but they have not broken down by hospital. That will provide our update also on meeting with the hospitals, but they don't provide that broken down by Durango hospitals.
No, that's not very helpful.
It's not very helpful.
We had this conversation 2 years ago and last year, and they haven't improved their reporting, and they haven't improved the usefulness of the information for decision.
Erin, I do have a question in the sense that, did you discuss many of the organizations going to virtual meetings or any discussion around that?
There were no operational or practical applications or responses around that topic.
I asked because we mentioned tonight a fire district meeting, a county commissioners meeting, different things coming up, and I just wondered what the provisions or recommendations might be forthcoming from that.
Right. I mean, there was discussion with the schools that, you know, the schools are obviously making every attempt to keep kids in school as it benefits the community. But other than that, there wasn't a lot of discussion around it.
I also wanted to say, I mean, you talked about it. The last statistic I saw, even on breakthrough cases for the past 2 weeks, was over 30% of the cases in the previous 2 weeks were from people who had been double vaccinated. We didn't have data on boosted, but we're seeing breakthrough cases. I was never able to get information about if they'd been boosted. They don't record that data yet.
And what the hospitalization?
The hospitalization rate we do have of what percentage. 2 weeks ago, it was over 95% of the people in the hospital with COVID were unvaccinated.
Right.
So it went as high as 98%.
But you just mentioned the breakthrough cases with people who were vaccinated, and I was wondering if they know how many of those people go to the hospital.
We know it's less than 2%, or less than 5%.
Okay.
But we don't know about boosters and breakthroughs. We believe it's happening, we just don't have data being collected.
So what's the process for next steps? And I believe, aren't we doing a satisfactions or a work survey? Are we doing a survey through, did I understand that incorrectly? I thought we were gonna maybe survey our staff to see how they felt about the work environment and for safety.
Not going to do a survey for safety, but we are, after this council meeting, staff is, well, there's still so many of them are going to meet to talk a little bit more about, from our specific one will be continuity of operations. If we take a look at if there's no testing and they're having to stay home, that can really affect some of our, while all of our staff is critical and core, but we do have public safety, we do have utilities, things like that. So we will be having a meeting to kind of discuss internally after this council meeting, staff only obviously, but to, just in case, make sure we're not doing an open meeting without it, but staff only to talk internally about some of the next steps and what are things we can do to be proactive about it and be on the front end.
It's really a shame that we don't have accurate rapid tests because, and enough available, because it could solve a lot of these questions. Like if we could all test every single day, if that was the need, so that we could be protecting everyone and ourselves. And it's a real shame that we don't have that capability, because that would go a long way towards not spreading this disease any further and keeping people safe. Any other questions or comments for Ms. Aaron? No? Okay. Any other city update conversations? Mr. Madrigal?
Oh, no, ma'am.
Okay, on to council reports and actions. So 14.1 is an update on Colorado Municipal League Housing Subcommittee discussions, and that would be Councilor Youssef.
Yes, thank you. So the Housing Subcommittee for CML met on December 28th. And interesting discussions that I just wanted to give you guys a few updates on it. So they are working with Jen Lopez on a webinar series for information and education and training around housing. And these are going to start in February, and they're going to be ongoing monthly. I just found that interesting that our Jen is going to be doing that at the state level, some more. The official report of the Housing Task Force at the state level will be released in January, or soon. It appears that about $150 million will go to a grant program that will specifically go to local governments and nonprofits. Another $100 million will go into rehabbing existing houses and preserving existing housing. The CML Housing Subcommittee is advocating for more permanent solutions for affordable housing funding. There is discussion around a possible fee, which would be a couple pennies on the value of property, essentially a recording fee, and it's just a discussion at this point, but these discussions are happening. They're talking about incentivizing businesses that build modular housing and get them tax relief and or putting money in with them up front. They're looking at putting about $40 million into that program, and CML would support that program. On land use discussion, the administration is very interested in continuing to incentivize local governments to find ways to increase density. They're likely going to put more funding, talk of $70 million for incentives for this program that provides grants for housing assessments and housing planning tools. There's a laundry list of what municipalities have to do to get that funding. And it appears that the legislator is not interested in increasing the short-term rental tax rate to the commercial rate for this legislative session. The discussion failed at the committee level by a substantial amount for several reasons. The real estate side suggested they would like to see a lower rate than 29%. There was also concerns that mom and pops, renters would be hit too hard on revenue streams that they are projecting. And there's a concern that there would be a difficulty for the accountants, assessors to know how to tell the difference between the commercial versus the residential based on how long they've been in the short-term rental pool. So we will definitely still continue these discussions with CML and track the legislature, but the opposition for the short-term rental tax is definitely very apparent already, and any discussion that goes from there will go back to the CML Policy Committee. So that's my update on that.
Wonderful, thank you. Do you have any other updates or anything else you attended?
I do. With the CML, often CML members will serve on the National League of Cities committees as well. They do dual enrollment. A lot of the people on the CML do dual roles. So I applied for the National League of Cities, the Human Development Committee, and I was recently selected to serve on that committee. They meet monthly. They're virtual meetings. And this committee is responsible for developing policy positions on issues involving social services, children and learning, poverty and income support, employment and workforce development, equal opportunity, education, and individual with disabilities. Most recently, this committee has been focusing on workforce and investment strategies to support local economies, including career and technical education and investment in training. And I thought that would be an interesting one to spend some time on this year. So I'll be working on that too. And
congratulations.
Let you know if I have any interesting things to report back.
Anything else?
That's it, thank you.
Any other counselors? We have the Multimodal Advisory Board was listed here, as well as the La Plata County Airport Commission, but any other counselors?
Sure. Multimodal was meeting in December 15th. They had updates on the Midtown Safety and Connectivity Improvement Design. Surveying was completed, and there will be public meetings coming up. Camino Crossing project surveying is delayed, but there is a design charrette for boards and commissions scheduled for January 11th at the library. College and 8th, largely completed in design, and project team meeting with CDOT to go over environmental reports. Downtown Next Steps, where they have selected a consultant for the community development-led vision project, and it anticipated to go through March and will have multiple public unit components. Pedestrian and bike counts were completed, and bike traffic was the highest since they started counting that in 2009. So pedestrian traffic was lower. Could be the weather too, I guess. And then they went in more detail on the 32nd Street traffic calming project, conceptual design, and then the visioning project for the larger area, Durango, on multimodal aspects, roads, pedestrians, parking. And that is a specific project I actually would like to bring to, in more detail to council, just to give a little heads up on the drawings. I'll reach out to Sarah and hopefully get a drawing as part of the agenda package, so that you guys can see it and have some detailed feedback before it comes to the council, obviously, in a more formal format.
So I'm sorry, are you saying that we're going to be getting information before the advisory board completes it and sends it on to council?
I thought it would be good to have, if you're interested, yeah. It's not complete yet, but the drawing is pretty far along, and I thought it might be interesting, even if you don't look at it, but just see what's going on at multimodal.
I'm a little confused about that, because normally that kind of stuff comes with a proposal or a recommendation either through the budget process or through the advisory board process, and we don't just get random plans generally for projects.
It's just a part of an update, just as I just gave you an update on the Camino or the Midtown improvements, which is also not a final design or a final project.
Right, but you're not sending us any maps or anything of that, so.
Listen, it's okay, I won't include it, no worries.
Just confused.
No worries, I thought I was being proactive in keeping council updated, not a problem.
Thank you. I mean, I personally would like to follow the process of our advisory boards. And
not a problem, thank you.
Any other comments?
Nope, that's it.
Nope, okay.
I had the Airport Commission meeting on December 16th. Tony reviewed and discussed the 2022 work plan, which is inclusive of operational and capital projects. And then we talked about the plan for our Airport Commission meetings, like a general outline for 2022. Some key things in terms of just an alignment with what Aaron is saying about COVID-19. They have acquired additional hand sanitizer stations, sneeze guards for all airport counters, added additional terminal signage, temporary floor markings. They upgraded their HVAC filtration and seating closure signage. The custodial staff is continuing to disinfect high-touch surfaces regularly, and also under the federal mask wearing mandate until at least March 18th of 2022. In terms of airport activity, November 2021 finished with 118% of 2019 levels. So 6 months in a row of record traffic at our airport. Our year to date is up 1.3% from 2019 levels. The Frontier Airlines will pause their Durango to Denver route, which they do every year from January, and it'll resume in April. We talked about the terminal development plan. There was an outline of a couple different options in the phasing of the new terminal design, which is exciting. Let's see what else. Oh, and the rehabilitation project still on schedule for September 2022, which is the full runway closure from September 7th through the 16th. So there you go.
Excellent, thank you.
I have two, the Wildfire and Watershed Protection Fund and the IAB, just a little bit. So the Wildfire and Watershed Protection Fund had what we called the meta meeting on the 17th of December. And I wrote down 15 names of organizations. I think there were 18. That we, both the county, the city was represented, BLM, a whole bunch of agencies. And I also will say Timber Age, which has got a plan to do modular housing, which is kind of interesting, was also there. And we started by looking at how to create that map and then to look at where the gaps are and where the highest risk is for wildfire. Amy also gave a presentation on what the city has done. And then we talked about the process going forward, and we'll be meeting again on the 13th, I think it is, with this group. But I wanted to share with you, Chief Evans talked about a book, and I've actually just started it, Paradise by Lizzie Johnson, and it's about the Paradise fire and the Paradise, what happened to that community. And he talked quite passionately about how similar Paradise is to Durango. And the thing he talked about that was most troubling to him, and I think after the fires up in the Denver area, is that deep concern about our evacuation routes, about them being insufficient. And as we think about the Wildfire and Watershed Protection Fund, not only thinking about the mitigation to the Forest Service, or to the forest area, but how do we ensure we have proper evacuation routes? And I will encourage us to think about that as we add that to our possible discussion item for strategic planning, because he was quite clear that while there are differences, it was a concern, and I think something we need to address. And then we will be meeting again in a week or two next week. We also have a meeting, and I'm going to go to the IAB. Jessica and I will be attending, I hope, the working group that's looking on the hospital, the systems capability within our area. What do we need as far as different healthcare providers and ensuring we have that kind of collaboration. And I guess the last thing I'd like to say, and I'd like to say, Councilor Bosman, I'm going to use this maybe as an example for how I bring, when I have questions and maybe a differing view to the table. So we had our IAB meeting last night. Yeah, it was just last night. And let me say, those are very good meetings. There's a lot of discussion. It's a robust discussion. And it's probably one of my, I think it's one of the most productive things we do. But there are times when I may disagree with staff, when I may have questions about it, as I did on Monday night. And what I do, if I think the data may not be as clear, or I think the direction may not be as assertive, is my role is to take it up with the city manager, because he supervises the staff. And so I will just share that, Jose's got a heads up that when I have some questions, and I'm hoping he can help clarify it, and it may involve a conversation with the staff, but those are the processes I will go through to try to reach, to make certain we've all tried our best to have a clear understanding of what is happening. And they have a heads up. I'm going to have questions, and so they have a heads up, but I view it as my responsibility to take it to our appointee in my one-on-ones. So I just share that with you, that they know I have questions, and we'll try to sort them out, and if not, then I'll probably still raise them in the study session, in advance of the study session. But I do want to thank you for your efforts, for the effort you make to work with addressing 5 different, plus a city councilor's expectations and questioning, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other reports or actions? I didn't have any in those 2 weeks, so because it was holiday and nothing was happening. So I'm sure 2 weeks from now when we meet again, I'll have 3 or 4 of them. So thank you very much, everyone, and this meeting's